eat amidst a low, constant murmur. A sharp clack. In a crowded prison cafeteria, inmates in tan uniforms eat amidst a low, constant murmur. A sharp clack hits the table. He sits down with a grimace. He picks up his first bite. The man sitting across from him aggressively demands to know why he is staring. The tattooed man mockingly offers a portion of his meal as a taunt.
A wet thwip sounds as a prisoner spits food directly onto his tray.
The man leans in close, threateningly ordering him to finish every single bite. The tattooed bully and his accomplice laugh, mocking his expression and lack of manners. Manabu slams the table, vowing to take revenge on everyone who framed him. He lunges with a utensil, declaring he will make them suffer as he has. The tattooed man recoils in shock as he faces Manabu's murderous, intense gaze. He vaults across the Munuzable. Blood splatters across the floor. Celebratory drinks fill the dark room. Manabu waits with a hopeful smile. He watches Mio Karasawa sing karaoke, thinking about his long-held feelings and confession plans. Mio tells him she is heading to the restroom as they exchange quick agreements. He watches her walk away. He tells himself today is the day. He catches up to her. Mio notices his uncharacteristically serious look and asks him what has happened. Blushing, Manabu finally gathers his courage and asks her to go out with him. She offers a sympathetic smile, but gently rejects him, saying she isn't looking for a boyfriend. She walks away, leaving him stunned. He stares after her in disbelief. He crushes a can in frustration. Empty cans cover the table. A long, rough gulp escapes as he tries to drown his disappointment in alcohol. Later, she finds the hallway cordoned off by police and wonders what is happening. A sudden, firm snap rings out as an officer's hand clamps onto his shoulder. An officer forcefully arrests him, accusing him of the most heinous crimes imaginable. Manabu cries out in confusion while the police report they have secured Mio's killer. He tries to pull away, shouting that these insane accusations are impossible. Horror fills his wide eyes. He spots Mio's lifeless body on the floor and denies the reality of the situation. In a cold courtroom, the judge sentences Manabu Tojo to 30 years in prison. The victim's family screams in outrage, demanding the murderer pay with his life. Manabu hangs his head as the crowd calls for his death, feeling their hatred. He sobs that he is innocent, desperately wishing he could wake from this nightmare. His white-haired father stands up, fiercely defending his son's innocence to the court. The grieving woman and another man lash out at him, refusing to hear his pleas. Several angry men suddenly rush toward the father with their fists raised. A heavy thud echoes as the white-haired man is struck and falls to the floor. Manabu screams for the violence to stop, heartbroken as he watches his father. Despite the beating, the father promises Manabu that he will find a way to prove his innocence. Prisoners loom over him menacingly. Shadows fill the cramped cell. The tattooed man stands behind him with a glowing eye as Manabu trembles in fear. A sharp smack lands as an inmate strikes him for daring to ignore their leader. In the dark cell, the black-haired Manabu weeps while insisting he was framed for his crimes. Standing over him, the large tattooed bully questions him with a look of confusion. A sudden heavy thud sounds as a foot slams into Manabu's stomach. He is thrown backward, crashing hard against the cell furniture under the gaze of his tormentors. The tattooed leader asks if he is responsible for the murder, which Manabu desperately denies through his tears. A sharp smack rings out as the brown-haired accomplice kicks him again for his persistent denial. Standing over the cowering man, the brown-haired inmate expresses his disgust and challenges anyone to oppose him. The tattooed bully mocks his complaints and orders the others to string him up. Manabu shouts for them to let him go as two inmates forcefully seize him. A rough creak sounds as thick ropes are pulled tight around his wrists. The brown-haired man prepares a punch, questioning if the prisoner still has the will to resist. Blood spatters as a powerful fist sinks into Manabu's midsection. A series of dull thuds echo as he is subjected to a relentless barrage of blows. The entire group descends upon him, joining in the brutal, coordinated beating. Hanging by his bound arms, Manabu's body goes limp and becomes covered in blood. A wet squelch sounds as the tattooed leader grabs Manabu by the hair to lift his head. He leans in close, issuing a vicious threat about what will happen if he snitches to the guards. Later, Manabu stands in the hallway as a guard approaches him for a conversation. The guard addresses Tojo and delivers the shocking news that his parents were killed in a traffic accident last night. Overwhelmed by grief, Manabu stands in shock as the guard asks about other relatives and mentions financial support. Seeing no reaction, the guard impatiently asks if he is even listening. The officer sighs in disappointment, telling Manabu he no longer cares and orders him to leave. The guards walk away together, casually discussing their plans to go find something to eat. Back in the cafeteria, Manabu stares blankly at his tray of prison food. The brown-haired inmate aggressively demands to know why the bastard is staring at them. The tattooed leader orders him to eat every bite, threatening consequences if any food is left behind. As he looks at the rice, he remembers Mia's rejection of his feelings and his father's promise to prove his innocence despite the beating he took. While being beaten in his cell, he reflects on his suffering and realizes he has nothing left to lose. A sharp creak sounds as he grips his chopsticks with a trembling, rage-filled hand. The word murderer echoes in his mind as he stares at the grinning face of his tormentor. He decides he cannot die yet, his eyes widening with a newfound dark determination. A heavy bang sounds as he slams the table, vowing to take revenge on everyone who was involved in framing him. He vaults across the table with a roar, declaring his intent to make them suffer as much as he has. A wet crunch sounds as Manabu's fist connects with the tattooed leader's face. The brown-haired accomplice screams out in shock as his leader is struck down. Driven by madness, Manabu pounces on the fallen man, screaming for him to die. The brown-haired man stands frozen in disbelief as he watches the brutal scene unfold. Manabu's face is cold and devoid of mercy as he stares down at his victim. Terror washes over the blonde inmate as he watches the relentless assault. A flurry of wet thuds sounds as Manabu pummels the leader's head against the floor. Manabu resolves that if he is destined to die, he will ensure he takes his enemy down with him. Blood sprays across the area as the intensity of the violence reaches a breaking point. The tattooed leader's face becomes a bloody mess under the constant heavy strikes. Another sickening thud echoes as his head is slammed violently into the concrete. A series of rapid cracks sound as Manabu continues the assault with animalistic ferocity. The bully lies unconscious and bloodied, completely broken by the unexpected retaliation. The brown-haired man finally calls out and rushes toward the scene to stop the violence. A sharp crack sounds as an inmate kicks Manabu away from their fallen leader. The brown-haired man grits his teeth in a fury, cursing at the black-haired prisoner. He watches Manabu with a look of genuine fear, wondering if the man has completely lost his mind. Guards rush into the cafeteria, demanding to know what is going on. A guard forcefully pins the black-haired prisoner to the floor. The officer strikes Manabu, cursing him for causing such a disturbance during his shift. Manabu's eyes glow with an intense, vengeful fury. A guard orders the others to get Goriki to the infirmary immediately and threatens to punish everyone else later. A sudden, loud cry rings out as Manabu is struck again. The guard reacts with a look of pure bewilderment. The officer orders him to be subdued immediately, believing he is trying to take his own life by running into the wall. A group of guards struggles to restrain the desperate prisoner. Manabu is pinned down, his face bloodied and battered. He lets out a final, agonizing scream. A steady drip falls from the IV bag. Lying in a hospital bed, the doctor observes that he has seemingly lost his will to live and has not eaten for days. The doctor informs a guard that they are administering nutrients, but warns that the man remains in critical danger. A rhythmic sweeping sound echoes as a mop moves across the floor. A white-haired inmate mopping the room tells Manabu that he shouldn't throw his life away. Manabu sits up and watches the old man continue his work. The white-haired man says he has heard about him and asks if he ever considered whether his parents truly died in a mere traffic accident. Shocked, Manabu asks him what he's trying to infer. He lunges forward and grabs the old man's collar, demanding to know how he could possibly have such information. The old man notes that something is always hidden behind the scenes and asks Manabu if he actually killed the young girl. Manabu looks away and firmly denies having committed the crime. The white-haired inmate suggests that his parents were likely eliminated by the real culprit because they found evidence of his innocence. Manabu realizes that his suspicions about the suspicious accident were correct. He wonders who could have done such a thing and for what possible purpose. With tears in his eyes, he resolves that he cannot die until he has avenged his parents. A knowing, subtle smile crosses the old man's face. The white-haired man warns him that Goriki has already publicly declared his intention to crush him. Manabu looks down and states that there is always a way to survive. The old man grins, telling the prisoner that he likes his guts. He offers to lend a hand if Manabu manages to survive Goriki, leading the prisoner to ask what kind of help he means. The white-haired man watches him with a mysterious expression. A sudden sound at the door catches the old man's attention. The old man advises Manabu to read a book in his spare time, claiming the knowledge will eventually prove useful. Manabu watches him walk away before turning his gaze toward the table. He picks up a book titled Human Anatomy and Weak Points. When Manabu asks who he is, the white-haired man identifies himself as Tsuchiya. He tells the younger man that he can simply refer to him as Old Man. A guard enters the hospital room, surprised to find the prisoner awake. The officer aggressively asks why he is reading a book so leisurely. He yells that things have been a complete nightmare because of the chaos the prisoner caused earlier. The guard orders him to get up immediately, sentencing him to a month in solitary and telling him to die there if he wishes. The officer forcefully shoves him into a dark cell, reiterating his death wish. A heavy, metallic bang sounds as the cell door is slammed shut. Standing in the darkness, Manabu clutches the book and resolves that he no longer has any desire to die. Time passes as he trains relentlessly, transforming his body into a peak physical state. Upon his release, the startled guard asks what he was doing in solitary, to which he calmly replies, "Nothing much." Prisoners perform manual labor under the sun in the yard. Manabu walks through the yard, unaware that he is being watched from the shadows. A malicious man laughs and announces to the group that Tojo has finally arrived. Manabu stands surrounded by hostile inmates. His eyes glow with dark madness. The large tattooed leader, Goriki, looms over him and reveals he left the hospital early just for him. Pointing to the scar on his face, the leader vows to pay him back 100-fold. He orders his subordinates to attack. Several inmates charge forward with aggression. A quick whoosh sounds as Manabu dodges and counters. Watching from behind, Goriki warns that anyone who slacks off will be beaten up later. Manabu's expression twists with animalistic fury. He lets out a primal roar. A heavy thud sounds as he strikes. A sharp hiss sounds as he pounces with glowing eyes. He maneuvers quickly between his attackers. A wet crunch sounds during the strike. Driven by rage, Manabu screams for them to buy. A loud bang sounds as he attacks. Prisoners watch the rooftop chaos below. Bodies fall through the air together. A wet squelch sounds as he lands. He resolves to crush everyone who tormented and framed him. His gaze burns with intense hatred. Guards rush toward the violent theme. An officer shouts for the fading. A guard warns that killing the man he just attacked will result in the death penalty. Manabus's blood-stained hand trembles violently. He lets out a final scream. Following the incident, he observes that the way others treat him has changed. Manabu recovers in the prison infirmary. A guard informs him that the leader's lower body was crushed, leaving him in a wheelchair for life, and orders no more trouble. Manabu sighs and agrees to return to the cell. He realizes that no one wants to cross a crazy person who lacks fear. A rhythmic tap sounds as mocks. Tsuchiya laughs and agrees with his sentiment. The white-haired man asks if he can create an opportunity, promising to help him escape if he does. Tsuchiya leans in and instructs him to cause a disturbance in the prison. Manabu questions whether he can actually trust her. Tsuchiya points out that a loose sewer grate in the kitchen can be used for escape during a commotion. The old man challenges him to go take a look if he doesn't believe him. Former bullies stare in genuine terror. Manabu returns to his dark cell. He commands the brown-haired man to step forward. Shaking in fear, the brown-haired man claims it was all a misunderstanding and blames the leader for the bullying. He expresses relief that the leader was defeated and offers to serve Manabu as his new boss. The other inmates join in, cheering for their new boss. Manabu watches them with cold indifference. He eats his meal in silence. A small piece of meat is lifted. The brown-haired inmate offers his own food to the new leader. Another prisoner offers his meat as well. Manabu looks on with quiet surprise. Prisoners discuss how Goriki was permanently injured by the newcomer. Umi-san feels disrespected because the new block leader has not greeted him. An accomplice suggests recruiting the skilled prisoner instead of starting a fight. The man promises that the entire block will eventually belong to Umi-san. His attention is taken by a rhythmic, quick tap sounding. The thin inmate approaches and asks if the prisoner is Tojo. He demands to know why Manabu has not shown proper respect to Umi-san. The brown-haired man fearfully whispers that Umi-san is a dangerous threat. Manabu observes the massive rival leader from across the cafeteria. Umi-san orders his subordinate to teach the cocky newcomer some manners. A sudden, loud bang sounds as the accomplice slams the table. Manabu strikes him, stating that he will only understand through physical pain. Blood sprays as the black-haired prisoner maintains a cold gaze. Fellow inmates watch the sudden burst of violence in shock. A heavy thud sounds as the fallen man begs Umi-san for help. A sharp bang sounds as Umi-san stands up in fury. Tension rises in the cafeteria as the two leaders face off. Surrounding prisoners stand as the confrontation reaches a breaking point. A quick, dry cough sounds from a nervous bystander. The bleeding man screams that he will kill the black-haired prisoner. Umi-san and Manabu engage in a tense, silent standoff. Umi-san remarks that he has never met anyone as arrogant as him. A distant guard shouts for everyone to return to their meals immediately. Umi-san snarls that the prisoner will regret his actions. He declares that they will settle their dispute during tomorrow's break. The brown-haired man breaks down in tears of terror. He warns that Umi-san will bring all his henchmen to crush them. Manabu calmly resolves to simply defeat every single attacker at once. Nearby prisoners react with disbelief to his bold declaration. A heavy, dull thud sounds in the quiet room. The man apologizes for his cowardice and pledges to stand by his boss. He lets out a loud rallying cry for his leader. The inmates cheer and raise their fists for their new boss. A soft, rhythmic rustling sounds in the dark prison cell. Manabu meticulously ties a heavy bundle within a blue cloth. He firmly tightens the knot on his makeshift weapon. Prisoners gather for recreation in the sunlit yard. Officers watch the inmates from behind the barbed wire fence. A prisoner casually invites a guard to go smoke in a corner. The guards are lured away from their post by the offer. Umi-san approaches with a malicious grin on his face. The yard falls silent as the confrontation finally begins. The brown-haired man urgently alerts his boss that the gang has arrived. Manabu challenges the group to show him the true extent of their resolve. The massive leader leads his armed henchmen in a violent charge. A wet crunch sounds as Manabu dodges and delivers a counterstrike. A heavy, sickening thud sounds during the relentless brawl. A bloodied inmate notices the guards watching from the distance. An officer reacts as a dropped cigarette falls to the ground. Blood sprays across the yard as Manabu strikes the enemy leader. Guards blow whistles frantically during the riot. Violent combat erupts throughout the prison yard. A large, bearded leader watches in shock. An inmate forcefully grabs a guard car. The officer shouts that rules are being violated and calls for immediate security backup. Chaos spreads as blood stains the concrete. The brown-haired inmate searches for his boss. Prisoners wonder where Tojo has gone. The black-haired man slips into the shows.
Tsuchiya urges him to get out of there while the distraction lasts.
The white-haired man tells him to follow closely. A heavy, metallic screech sounds as he opens a grate. The black-haired man remains stoic and focused. They descend together into the dark sewer system.
A loud, echoing clang rings through the tunnel. A wet splash sounds as they run through sludge.
Tsuya tells him that it stinks but to bear with it. Rats scurry past their feet in the kirk. A heavy, rhythmic sloshing sounds in the sewer. They reach a set of heavy iron bars. Tsuchiya notes that he has visited this area a few times. The old man tells him to push the gate hard. Tsuchiya's eyes glow with a lethal hidden intent.
A sharp squelch sounds of his sex.
The old man chuckles while betraying his younger companion.
Tsuchiya declares that the mission ends here and offers to grant his death wish.
A dull, heavy thud sounds as he falls.
Tsuchiya watches his victim from behind the bars.
A sudden, firm grip sounds as he's caught.
The old man reacts to a sudden, sharp sound.
Manabu points out the old man's own advice about hidden agendas and strange kindness. The black-haired man reveals he hid several things on his body just in case. Concealed armor absorbs the impact of the hidden blade.
He declares that he will never trust anyone anymore. A heavy bang sounds during the aggressive kick.
A sharp whoosh sounds as he readies a knife. Manabu mocks the old man, telling him to blame his own naivete if he loses.
A sudden, soft rustle sounds as powder flies.
A wet crunch sounds during the bone-breaking punch. A sharp hiss sounds as the man screams in agony. Tsuchiya asks in shock if he prepared lime and when he did so.
Manabu explains he learned about the knife and sulfuric acid plan from an informant. He reveals he has recovered the bottle of poison.
A flashback shows him retrieving the bottle during their time together. The old man's face twists with pure, murderous rage. Tsuchiya lunges forward with a final, desperate roar. A heavy thud sounds as the strike lands. Manabu delivers a final devastating blow to his opponent. Tsuchiya admits that he was certainly the naive one. Manabu resolves to never repeat the same mistake again.
Tsuchiya expresses regret at being defeated by someone like him.
A sharp squelch sounds as blood sprays from his leg. A wet sizzle sounds as Manabu pours the sulfuric acid over the old man's body. A loud splash sounds as the black-haired man emerges from the sewer exit. He walks away from the dark tunnel toward the horizon. Manabu deeply inhales, noting the fresh scent of freedom. A soft rustle sounds as he reveals slabs of raw meat bandaged to his torso.
He discards his bloodied prison clothes and the meat into the river, vowing to seek revenge.
An employee welcomes the white-haired officer and asks if he is still searching for the convicts. The officer explains they are fully mobilized because the escaped convict remains at large. The cook questions whether there were 2 escaped convicts.
The guard notes the young one's body was found charred while the habitual offender is still missing.
Back in the sewer, a faint sizzle sounds as Manabu stands over a blackened corpse. A quiet sizzle sounds from the charred prison identification jack. The cook expresses pity over the tragic death of the younger escapee.
Another officer dismisses the tragedy, stating the man was a criminal who brought it upon himself.
The officer remarks that the parents stole an autopsy report to prove their son's innocence. Manabu realizes the importance of the report and resolves to find it. A soft scuff sounds as the man in the black cap stands up. The officer calls out to the young man. Manabu turns slightly to look back at the table. The guard warns him to stay indoors because of the dangerous escaped convict. Manabu calmly acknowledges the warning before leaving. A rhythmic click sounds as a blonde waiter walks down the street. Manabu follows the man silently from a distance.
The blonde man wonders what he should eat for dinner.
A sudden sharp whoosh sounds as a knife is held to his throat.
Terrified, the waiter claims he has no money and is just a part-timer. Manabu demands to know who ordered him to frame Gaku Tojo while the waiter asks if he's Tojo's buddy. The waiter warns that Manabu should let go unless he wants his limbs broken like Yuji Suzuki.
A wet crunch sounds as Manabu stabs the man's leg, demanding to know who hurt Yuji.
Manabu demands to know who forced him to give false testimony. The blonde man insists the mastermind is someone Manabu cannot handle. A sharp squelch sounds as he delivers another painful strike. Manabu gives the man one final chance to answer his questions. The waiter reveals Rei Amano paid and threatened him to give false testimony. He explains that she was Mio's best friend and must know the truth. Manabu asks where to find her, and the man directs him to a nightclub. The man pleads for his life as Manabu drags him away.
A heavy thud sounds as the tied-up man is dropped near a well.
A muffled groan sounds as tape is placed over the man's mouth.
Manabu tells him to stay quiet in the well until everything is settled.
A dull bang sounds as the man is kicked into the dark well.
Manabu warns that the man will starve if something happens to him at the club. A soft crackle sounds as a bandaged man drinks alone by a fire. He recalls protecting Manabu from bullies when they were children.
Yuji resolves to find the truth and prove his friend's innocence.
A quiet sigh sounds as he slumps over in despair. Manabu watches the neon lights of the nightclub from the house. No discernible narrative content detected.
The large man lets out a loud, booming laugh while walking with his companion.
She bows politely and invites the customer to return for an even better experience next time.
Checking her watch, she notes that it is finally time to end her shift.
Manabu shadows her silently as she walks down the dark city street.
He readies a sharp knife as he closes the distance behind her. She answers a phone call about meeting at a usual spot, unknowingly forcing Manabu to hesitate and hide his weapon as she walks away. He watches from the shadows as she enters a business called Net Paradise.
Inside, she is intercepted by 3 men in gray suits in a building Manabu identifies as being run by a thug named Hiroto Kagami.
Realizing time is short before the owner arrives, he decides to seize his only opportunity and enters the building. Ray remarks that someone took too long to arrive, mistakenly assuming the man entering the room is her expected visitor.
She turns around and demands to know his identity and how he gained access to the private room. He suddenly and forcefully seizes her arm before she can react.
Manabu holds a blade to her throat and commands silence before revealing his face, which leaves her trembling as she recognizes that he is still alive.
He aggressively questions why she chose to frame him, but she counters by asking if he truly believes she had the resources to coordinate such a plan. She explains that the massive cost of bribing 7 witnesses and other officials was over 10 million yen, arguing that a hostess living in a cafe could never afford such a conspiracy.
She claims the true mastermind is untouchable and urges him to flee immediately before Hiroto arrives and traps him in the room.
Facing a lethal threat, she finally confesses that a man named Koki Yoshida was responsible, a name Manabu repeats in quiet contemplation. Manabu wonders about the motive behind Koki Yoshida's involvement as he processes the new information.
Men in the hallway announce that the woman is waiting inside as Manabu continues his tense interrogation.
She insists she has told him everything and begs him to stop his pursuit and get out while he still can.
He demands she choose a side in his quest for revenge while she begins writing on a piece of paper. She hands him a note and promises a full explanation later if he agrees to leave right now.
He accepts the contact information, but warns her that any attempt to betray him will be met with no mercy.
A man in a pink suit and his guards pass Manabu in the hallway.
The man in the pink suit pauses and looks back at the stranger with a suspicious expression.
Hiroto Kagami finds Manabu's face familiar and questions the marks on his neck, which Manabu dismisses as a necklace accident before moving on.
Later, he lies alone in a dimly lit room, lost in his thoughts.
A memory shows Mio drinking with a man while other companions socialize nearby. In happier times, Mio and Ray enjoyed karaoke and toasted to their friendship. The scene shifts to the couple walking away from the table together during that night.
Manabu makes a call from a public phone booth as the busy city moves around him.
He contacts his target to arrange a secret meeting at the Riverside Park later that night. Ray agrees to the meeting over the phone while her employer pressures her to continue singing.
Night falls as Ray arrives at the quiet, illuminated Riverside boardwalk.
He watches her from behind a tree, remaining unseen as she waits for him.
Manabu steps forward and demands the truth about the exact circumstances of his parents' deaths.
She explains that his parents had obtained the original autopsy report and were planning to file for a legal retrial.
She reveals that Yoshida murdered them in a staged accident because he was terrified the contents of the report would be made public.
She breaks down in tears and apologizes for the tragedy as a gruesome memory of the crime scene lingers.
He violently strikes her across the face, declaring that her apologies are worthless after everything he has lost.
He demands to know the specific contents of the report and how Mio actually died. She tearfully reveals that the report found evidence of 3 different attackers, but confirmed that he was not among them, proving his innocence was buried to protect the real criminals.
She explains that while Mio initially went with Yoshida and his wealthy friends for money, they treated her as nothing more than an object. In a memory, Yoshida hands over a massive bribe and orders that his friends be shown a good time for the night. Mio asks what they have planned, seemingly unaware of the extreme danger she is in.
She describes how they forced lethal doses of drugs on Mio until she died right in front of them.
The men in the memory recklessly distribute drugs while looming over their helpless victim.
One man forcibly administers the substances to the woman against her will.
He taunts her and demands a reaction as the drugs begin to take their toll on her body.
The perpetrators panic as they realize she has stopped moving and is no longer responsive. Men panic as their victim stops breathing.
Manabu demands to know why Ray framed him.
Ray explains his false confession fit their script. She tearfully claims Yoshida threatened to kill her.
Manabu resolves to crush Yoshida at any cost.
Ray warns of the bodyguards protecting Yoshida.
She begs him to flee for his life.
Manabu warns her not to interfere with him.
He commands her to follow him to safety.
Manabu refuses to release her until things settle. He demands she hand over her smartphone immediately.
Ray screams as she is suddenly thrown down.
She accepts her imprisonment as a deserved punishment.
Yoshida dances with a companion in a club.
He suggests they move to a private area. She smiles at his bold and forward request. Yoshida orders his security to wait outside alone. Manabu decides to take this risky opportunity now. A guard stops him, but Manabu dismisses him. The guard stares him down with intense suspicion. He eventually permits the stranger to move forward. A pained shout echoes as Manabu enters a wound. Manabu draws his weapon and warns of interference. A heavy thud sounds as he kicks Yoshida. Startled, Yoshida demands to know his attacker's identity. Manabu lunges forward with focused and lethal intent. A woman screams as blood sprays from Yoshida. Yoshida clutches his bleeding neck in sudden shock. Manabu follows up with another aggressive, powerful strike. He pins the target with a blade held high. Recognition dawns as guards rush in to help. Manabu vaults over the stalls to evade pursuit. He lands quickly and prepares for a gawa. A loud crash sounds as he breaks through glass. Yoshida offers a bounty for his attacker's capture. Manabu sprints through the dark and narrow alleys. Pursuers miss him as he hides among baggage. He worries his blown identity is wasted time. Manabu resolves that one final chance still remains. A black car pulls up to Roundtown. Officers confirm the identity of the violent assailant. Yoshida vows to personally execute his mortal enemy. Rei and Yuji wait together at the well. They look up as a shadow descends above. Manabu drops into the well with a bag.
Rei asks if he succeeded in killing Yoshida.
Yuji crawls forward, desperately begging for clean water. He greedily gulps down the water Manabu provided. Manabu looks up toward the distant night sky. He orders them silent under threat of death. Manabu vows that their next encounter will mark the end for his adversary. Koki Yoshida reveals he has captured Suzuki and asks if Manabu wants to join him. Yoshida proposes a deal for Manabu to surrender quietly in exchange for Suzuki's release. Manabu offers to trade the captives he holds for his friend's freedom. A mocking laugh echoes as Yoshida revels in the desperate situation. Manabu claims a copy of the autopsy report survived and can prove Yoshida's guilt. Yoshida dismisses the claim as a bluff, questioning why he didn't report it sooner. His face contorts with sudden fury as he demands to know Manabu's true goal. Manabu demands his name be cleared, expressing a desperate desire to survive. His eyes burn with cold determination as he continues the high-stakes negotiation. Yoshida offers money and protection for the evidence, insisting on an immediate in-person meeting. Rei frantically signals her disapproval of the dangerous plan from the background. She screams a warning that meeting Yoshida is nothing short of a suicide mission.
Tossing the phone aside, he tells his captives they are free to do as they wish.
Rei desperately grabs his arm, pleading with him not to walk into a certain death trap. Later, he visits a shop and decides to purchase a new set of clothes. As he walks away, a confused chef wonders what happened to his missing kitchen knife. He purchases 2 bottles of whiskey to prepare for the long night ahead. A soft crackle sounds as he sits by a fire, sharpening his stolen blades. He stands and moves away from the warmth, fully prepared for the coming conflict. A dull thump sounds as he drops to his knees before the city skyline. He prays for his parents' strength and vows to join them once his revenge is complete. He looks out over the snowy city, steeling himself for the final confrontation. Armed guards stand ready as snow begins to blanket the mansion's entrance. Manabu approaches the hostile group alone, showing no fear despite the overwhelming odds. Yoshida watches from above with a smug, self-assured expression on his face. He orders his men to ensure that the intruder does not leave the grounds alive. A heavy thud sounds as a guard kicks the captive Suzuki toward the newcomer. The guards close in, surrounding Manabu as he prepares to make his move. Yoshida mockingly invites him inside to escape the cold and settle their business. A loud creak sounds as the massive doors are thrown open for the guest. Manabu stands his ground and demands Suzuki's release before he will agree to enter. With a dismissive wave, Yoshida signals for his men to comply with the demand. Another pained grunt sounds as the injured Suzuki is shoved roughly across the floor. Yoshida boastfully declares himself a man of his word while looking down at them. A subordinate questions if releasing their captive will cost them their only leverage. Yoshida scoffs, noting that Suzuki's injuries will prevent any chance of a clean escape. Suzuki is shocked to see his friend alive, but Manabu urges him to leave quickly. Suzuki warns him that entering the mansion is a trap filled with armed goons. Manabu shouts for Yoshida to let his friend go so he can enter the building. He urges Suzuki to survive for his family and remember him after everything is over. Suzuki is dragged away, shouting in protest as Manabu prepares for the final battle. A rhythmic tapping sounds as Yoshida descends the grand staircase toward his best. A sharp whoosh sounds as blades are drawn the moment Manabu enters the room. His eyes glow with a lethal, predatory light as he faces his mortal enemy. He stands tall between the massive guards, refusing to be intimidated by their size. Yoshida demands to know if he brought the evidence he used as a bargaining chip. Manabu retorts that he would never bring something so vital into such a dangerous place. Enraged, Yoshida yells for him to stop playing games and face his inevitable fate. A collective metallic ring sounds as the guards raise their weapons to strike at once. Manabu holds up 2 bottles of whiskey and mockingly suggests that they should not be so tense and have some fun. Koki Yoshida looks down at him and asks what this is about and if the booze is a gift for him. He tightly grips the 2 bottles of whiskey. A sharp click sounds as heavy shoes step firmly onto the marble floor. A large, older man in glasses stands framed in the doorway with several silhouettes behind him. Shocked to see his father, Koki Yoshida asks him why he has arrived at the mansion. His father stares ahead coldly and asks who else but him is going to clean up his son's mess. A dull thud sounds as guards roughly throw the bound and gagged Suzuki and Amano onto the floor. The captives struggle against their gags while being watched by the scarred security guard. The older man orders that if he is going to do it, he must be thorough and leave no trace, prompting Koki to ask if he means to eliminate everyone involved, including Amano. He tells Koki he is naive to think Amano is loyal and reveals she is the one who leaked the autopsy report to the parents. Manabu stands in the background and listens as the source of the leak is finally revealed. A sharp smack sounds as a powerful strike lands against the bound woman's face. Koki yells that she betrayed him after all the money he gave her and strikes her again with focused rage. She stands up and defiantly claims that while she sleeps with anyone, her heart isn't rotten and she couldn't stand seeing the searching parents anymore. A heavy thump sounds as Koki kicks her to the ground, yelling for her to shut up and vowing to bury her with his enemy. The older man asks if he is Manabu Tojo, and Manabu retorts by asking if he was put through everything only for the man to not even know his face. The older man smiles cruelly and declares that he has no need to know people who are worth less than insects. He looks down from the stairs and demands to know the current location of the copy of the autopsy report. Manabu stares back at the older man with cold and unwavering determination. The older man gives a subtle signal to his elite security team to prepare for an attack. He boasts that the forces backing him are far beyond anything his opponent could possibly imagine. He declares that no matter where the report is, once the intruder is dead, everything will finally be over. He pauses for a moment as snow begins to fall, preparing to deliver a final revelation. He identifies the men surrounding Manabu as the ones who are actually responsible for killing his parents. Rage boils over as Manabu's eyes widen at the sudden and horrific revelation. His bandaged hand trembles with a lethal and uncontrollable fury as he prepares to strike. He screams Manjiro Yoshida's name as he reaches his absolute breaking point. He raises the whiskey bottles high and prepares to launch his desperate assault. A violent crash sounds as he smashes the whiskey bottles across the marble floor. A pained yell echoes as a guard loses his footing on the suddenly slick liquid. A heavy thud sounds as the guard falls face first into the spreading spill. He struggles to regain his balance on the treacherous and oily floor. Manabu seizes the opening and slashes through the neck of an enemy as blood sprays into the air. Koki realizes the liquid is oil and screams that his attacker is nothing more than a coward.
A wet squelch sounds as Manabu drives a blade into a fallen guard's throat with lethal intent.
Koki orders his men to swarm the intruder while another guard falls to a deep and bloody slash. Blood stains the marble floor as multiple guards lie dead or dying in the oil. Manabu weaves through the chaos with practiced and lethal precision. He moves with a sudden and blinding speed to avoid the remaining attackers. He executes a high-speed flip to evade the blades of the surrounding guards. He lands in a low crouch, blood dripping from his stolen kitchen knives as he adjusts his sunglasses. Koki yells for his men to kill the show-off immediately as he watches from a distance.
More guards charge forward with their weapons raised to strike the intruder down at once.
Manabu tenses his muscles and prepares to face the next wave of incoming attackers. A sharp hiss sounds as he throws a blinding powder into the eyes of the advancing men. He grips his weapon tightly as the snow-like powder fills the air around him. The guards scream in agony as they are blinded and helpless against the sudden maneuver. A wet slash sounds as Manabu cuts through the defenseless men with a single powerful motion. He turns back toward his target, his eyes glowing with a terrifying and red bloodlust. Tojo wears a dark, menacing smile. A sudden, sharp splash of blood. 3 men brace in the smoke. Tojo looms over his suit-clad opponents. Koki clutches his head in Tedek. The older man with glasses barks orders at Koki to quickly retrieve the alcohol. He explains that alcohol is the only way to wash away the burning quicklime. The tattooed woman watches the fire. Koki snarls at the woman as she desperately clings to his leg to stop him. With a heavy thud, he kits. Bleeding and broken, the woman silently resolves that this sacrifice is the least she can do. Armed guards advance to target. Tojo stands tall amidst defeated broads. Guards wash their eyes of alcohol. The older man warns his men of the slippery floor, viewing Tojo as a cornered target. Guards reform their line for assault. A guard leaps forward with an ant.
Tojo counterpins his attacker with force.
A sinister grin spreads across his face. The remaining guards continue their march. With a fierce rah, Yuji tackles. Yuji delivers a powerful high kick. A guard winds up to strike. Tojo clamps onto a guard's face. A brutal impact sprays fresh blood. Koki expresses his bitter regret, cursing himself for not killing Tojo sooner. Tojo remains the storm's calm eye. Torn sleeves reveal hidden metal horror. Another guard is sent flying backward. Koki threatens to finish the injured Yuji, but Yuji defiantly welcomes the challenge. Tojo casts a cold sidelong glance. A heavy punch connects with impact. Enemies pour into the fray relentlessly. Tojo calmly asks if they need a light while flicking open his metal lighter. Tojo tosses a flame toward enemies.
Alcohol ignites, consuming the attackers instantly.
Koki kicks Yuji in the chest.
Koki raises his blade to kill. Tojo intervenes with a lightning kick. Crumpled on the floor, Koki gasps in disbelief at his sudden and total defeat.
Tojo presses his foot into Koki's head, coldly demanding any final words before the end.
The older man takes a hostage. He pulls her head back roughly. Koki pathetically begs for mercy, but Tojo invites him to try and resist one last time. Desperate, Koki offers money and promises to clear Tojo's name, while his father attempts to negotiate a truce.
The father threatens a merciless response if his son is harmed, but Tojo remains completely unfazed.
The woman urges Tojo to kill them all, while the older man focuses solely on saving Koki.
Koki promises to fetch gold bars and cash, his cowardice fully exposed as he bargains for his life.
Koki scrambles up the marble stairs. The older man tells them to take the payout and leave, declaring their conflict at an end.
Split panel. Tojo glares intensely while Amano is held by her hair.
A brutal punch from Yoshida sends Amano reeling backward. Wish! Tojo delivers a lethal slash to the older man's throat as blood sprays. Yoshida collapses to the floor, clutching his bleeding neck.
Amano looks on with a silent, tearful sense of relief.
Tojo helps Amano stand as her captor lies dead nearby.
Amano warns of hidden guns as Koki loads his weapon, vowing to kill everyone.
Koki sprints down the marble stairs, clutching a heavy black bag.
Shock freezes Koki as he discovers his father's lifeless body.
Koki rages at Tojo for breaking their deal and murdering his father. A voice yells, "Over here!" as Koki turns toward a partition. Bang! Koki fires his handgun repeatedly at the source of the noise. The distraction is revealed as a phone recording near two bound guards.
A smartphone plays the looped recording on the blood-spattered floor.
Wish! Tojo seizes the opening, severing Koki's hand with a single swift strike.
A powerful kick sends the maimed Koki flying across the hall. Tojo pins his defeated enemy to the ground with overwhelming force. Koki demands to know why Tojo killed his father, calling him a traitor.
Tojo vows to finish the family to honor his own parents' memory.
A final lethal strike ends Koki's life on the cold tile. Tojo stands victorious as Amano tends to the injured Yuji.
Clatter! Dropping his blade, Tojo tearfully declares his parents have been avenged.
Tojo orders Amano to take Yuji to safety while he stays behind. Snow falls as the weary duo departs the scene of chaos. Amano and Yuji cast a final worried glance at the mansion. Tojo emerges with a bag of cash and gold, urging them to hide. Amano is stunned, confessing that she had previously betrayed him.
Tojo offers forgiveness, but Yuji questions why he isn't joining them.
Yuji grips Tojo's arm, vowing to stay even if it means prison. Tojo presents an envelope claiming he has a solo plan for survival.
Amano reacts with dread, realizing the dangerous nature of his intent.
Tojo asks for trust, promising to return alive after one final night.
Amano struggles against Yuji, refusing to let Tojo fight alone again. Yuji insists they must have faith in Manabu and stay out of his way. Tojo watches silently as his allies disappear into the snowy night.
Amano and Yuji find shelter beneath a dark stone bridge.
Amano speculates the documents prove the corruption of the city's elites. Amano explains Yoshida likely used his police rank to obtain the evidence. Yuji fears for Tojo's life and tries to rush to his aid. Amano restrains Yuji, arguing that Tojo's plan is his only chance. Amano believes Manjiro was an eyesore to the elite, making a deal possible. A scandalous photo reveals a tattooed man in a compromising position. Now dressed in a suit, Tojo prepares for his next encounter. Tojo walks toward a grand traditional-style gate under the night sky. The rhythmic sound of footsteps echoes as Tojo ascends the stairs. He approaches the guarded entrance of a massive private estate. Guards block his path, but Tojo firmly demands to see Mr. Brada. A guard refuses him entry, stating the boss is already resting. Tojo stares back defiantly, insisting the meeting must happen immediately. A scarred enforcer cracks his knuckles, asking if Tojo seeks his own death. Tojo reveals Manjiro's severed head, leaving the guards in total shock as they demand to know his plan. The sweating guard panics and tells the intruder to wait there. An authoritative voice commands the guards to let the man through.
Tojo walks into the courtyard as more suit-clad guards observe him.
Goda sits calmly while a woman in a white dress pours him tea.
Lifting his cup, the bald man asks if he is indeed Tojo. The black-haired man asks if his identity is already known. Goda explains that Manjiro's presence with a severed head confirms everything, prompting Tojo to ask for his life to be spared. Angered, Goda slams his hand down and questions why he should help the man who killed his subordinates. The surrounding guards watch the tense negotiation in silence. Tojo challenges Goda to kill him now if his men truly mattered or otherwise listen to his proposal. Goda finds him interesting and demands a reason to let him live. Tojo holds up an envelope, offering a deal for his survival. The woman in the white dress reaches out to take the envelope. She carries the documents toward Goda as Tojo stands in midst. Goda dismisses the threat, but Tojo points out the higher-ups would care about the evidence of their crimes. Goda suggests murder as a solution. Looking unimpressed, the boss claims Tojo isn't even on his level. Tojo claims he has nothing left to lose and states the evidence will be sent to the police by midnight if he fails to return.
Gota continues pouring tea while asking what this threat has to do with him.
Tojo explains that since he was last seen at this estate, Gota would be framed as the mastermind behind Manjiro's murder.
Pausing, Gota realizes Tojo didn't come for help, but to drag the boss down with him.
Tojo offers a final choice, help him and profit from the evidence or refuse and be destroyed together. Gota laughs heartily, finding the boy's audacity reminiscent of his own youth. Tojo drinks deeply from a small bottle. Gota agrees to fix the situation on the condition that Tojo enters his service starting today.
Tojo pledges his devotion. Gota orders Muto to clean up the murder scene and tell the police to back off.
Muto bows and confirms he understands his words. Gota tells the woman to treat Tojo well and ensure he stays the night.
Tojo repeats his midnight warning, but Gota tells him to drop the act, knowing it was a bluff.
Acknowledging he was seen through, Tojo smiles as the boss walks away. The black-haired woman begins to slip off her dress.
Tojo approaches the woman as she waits on the edge of the chop. Tojo gently drapes a robe back over her shoulders.
Tojo rejects the woman's advances, stating he is far too exhausted and wants to be left alone.
Tojo finally finds a moment to relax in a hot bath. Smoking a cigar, Gota notes that Tojo is extraordinary for being able to suppress his desires at such an age.
The woman asks if she should continue to monitor their new best.
Gota plans to keep his guard up and find Tojo's weakness before fully turning him into a pawn.
Tojo sits up quickly as he awakens.
Morning arrives as the woman attends to Tojo, who thanks her and prepares to leave.
She tells him there is no hurry and asks him to watch the news.
A news anchor reports on the fire and the deaths of the Yoshida family members.
The woman tells him his worries are over and urges him to stay and enjoy himself.
She reaches out for him and asks for his name.
Tojo politely declines Miss Ayame, insisting that he still has unfinished business to attend to.
Tojo walks toward the bridge where his weary allies are waiting.
Amano cries out in joy and rushes to embrace Tojo. She tells him she knew he would survive while the injured Yuji Lacan.
Tojo looks at his friends and declares that they are finally free from their pursuers.
She weeps while embracing her savior.
A dilapidated apartment building stands tall.
A vibrant feast covers the table.
Surprised by the delicious meal, the man in green notes the girl's unexpected talent. Holding a spatula, the woman explains she has fended for herself since childhood and can manage basic tasks.
The trio shares a quiet drink. Holding her glass, the brown-haired woman asks Tojo about his future intentions. Tojo suggests using their stolen funds to establish a legitimate small business.
The man in green jokingly asks if this means they will all be executives now. Smiling warmly, the woman promises to support whatever path Tojo chooses. The man in green asks if she intends to return to her former nightclub job. She admits her difficult past supported her brother's illness, but declares she is ready for a fresh start.
They raise their glasses in celebratory toast.
The injured man snores on the sofa.
Tojo stares at the ceiling and butt.
Dressed in a long shirt, the woman explains her homelessness and asks to stay with them. Tojo offers her the bed while he takes the floor, mentioning the limited sleeping arrangements.
Placing a hand on his back, she suggests they share the bed together despite the cramped quarters.
Walking down the street, the man in green asks if the woman is moving in permanently. Tojo confirms her situation and notes they will need to purchase additional furniture soon.
The man in green remarks that their current cash reserves should provide long-term security. Menacing tattooed thugs pass by them. Stopping in his tracks, the blonde thug asks if they are the targets. Seeing trouble, the man in green urges Tojo to leave the scene immediately.
The blonde thug mocks the injured man's recovery, suggesting they didn't beat him enough last time. Defiant, the man in green insists he did nothing and tells the bully to back off.
Getting into their personal space, the thug threatens to pulverize the man in green on sight.
The blonde thug slaps Tojo and mockingly asks the bastard if he has a problem. Boom! Tojo responds with a bone-shattering punch to the thug's face. The impact sends the thug reeling.
Blood spatters across the pavement.
Clutching his bleeding mouth, the thug snarls at the audacity of the attack. Tojo unbuttons his shirt, revealing his scarred torso. The sight of Tojo's brutal scars silences the surrounding crowd. Panicked, the leader screams for his subordinates to attack the lone man. Wish! The thugs charge forward together!
Tojo waits calmly for the assault.
He effortlessly ducks a wild swing.
Boom! A single strike slams an attacker face first into the concrete.
Tojo prepares to counter another blow. He catches the incoming fist easily. Thwack! A knee to the ribs drops the second attacker instantly.
The leader's bravado turns to fear.
Backing away, the bruised leader admits their mistake and pathetically tries to negotiate.
Tojo seizes the man's jaw kegly.
He stares with a killer's eyes.
The man in green restrains Tojo, reminding him that a murder would destroy their new stability.
As they walk away, the wounded thug spits a final, desperate threat. The thugs warn of their boss Kuro's impending revenge, but Tojo coldly invites the challenge. The man in green explains that Kuro is a dangerous underworld figure controlling local businesses. The black-haired man suggests fighting Kuro to take the area while his friend notes his startling personality change. The short-haired man in the green shirt mentions two others he helped and leaves to call them. A quiet bird's-eye view of a desolate industrial area reveals the staging ground for the upcoming conflict. Two rough-looking men wait outside. One smokes a cigarette while a much larger man eats a snack. The black-haired man skeptically observes the duo, doubting their usefulness in a serious physical altercation. His short-haired companion insists that despite appearances, these are men who can be fully trusted. Drawing on his cigarette, the man in the cap asks Yuji to identify their specific opponent.
Yuji clenches his fist and identifies their target as the man known as Kuro-san.
The two new recruits are visibly startled by the mention of the notorious name Kuroki. The black-haired man warns them of the group's size, offering them a chance to back out if they are afraid. The man in the cap dismisses the idea of fear, claiming he has wanted to settle things with Kuroki for a long time. Clasping his hands together, the large man agrees that he was waiting for the opportunity to strike back. The black-haired man silently notes the impressive courage of Yuji's friends as they prepare to move. He acknowledges their spirit but cautions that raw courage alone isn't enough for a small group to win.
A sharp screech sounds as a white van speeds down a road with its headlights blazing.
A group of armed men piles out of the van, ready for a coordinated ambush. A muscular man with a chest tattoo and sunglasses asks his underlings if they've arrived at the correct location. The scarred blonde man confirms they have arrived, reporting that the targets have been there since his daytime scouting. Looking around the corner, the tattooed leader asks for the exact number of opponents they are facing. The scarred man reports 5 people, warning that the leader is a dangerous ex-convict and a total psychopath. Flashing a sinister grin, the tattooed man boasts that his own time in prison makes him the bigger psycho. Through a small window, the enemies are seen charging toward the hideout with wooden bats in hand. The black-haired man and his group stand ready as the hostile force approaches their door. The man in the cap hides atop a tall bookshelf, preparing a surprise for the intruders. A heavy bang sounds as the door is kicked open with violent force. The two groups face off in the middle of the room as the tension reaches its peak. The tattooed leader looks down at the black-haired man and asks if he is the one who took out his men. He laughs maniacally and shouts for his enemies to bring everything they have. Two of the intruders charge forward with their bats raised high while their leader watches from behind. From his perch on the bookshelf, the man in the cap tips over a bucket, dumping white powder over the attackers. A heavy splashing sound follows as the attackers are blinded by the falling substance, much to their leader's fury. The man on the shelf keeps his grip as he looks down at the chaos below. A loud thud sounds as a powerful kick sends one of the shirtless attackers flying backward. With a cocky smirk, the man with the cap pulls the rope to reset his makeshift trap. The bucket swings back through the air, ready for another round of disruption.
Another drenching splash hits the attackers as they struggle to maintain their footing in the chaos.
Frustrated by the unorthodox tactics, the tattooed leader growls that they are using cowardly tricks to fight. The black-haired man seizes the moment, grabbing an attacker by the throat while his allies provide cover. A pained scream erupts as the black-haired man slams his opponent down with overwhelming strength. The scarred blonde man wipes his mouth, complaining that their opponent's methods are far too dirty. Standing tall, the black-haired man retorts that they are simply practicing the philosophy of an eye for an eye. A heavy crash sounds as the blonde man is sent sliding across the floor after a decisive blow. The intruders lie defeated and scattered across the tile floor as the black-haired man stands victorious. The tattooed leader calls him a gutless bastard and vows to kill him, but the black-haired man simply invites the challenge. Surprised by the bravery, the leader agrees to a one-on-one duel and warns his subordinate to stay back. A rhythmic snap sounds as the leader rips his shirt open, revealing a massive tiger tattoo on his chest. The two leaders charge at each other in the center of the room as water continues to drip from above. The black-haired man ducks under a powerful swing, looking for a precise opening to strike.
A dull thud sounds as a perfectly timed punch lands square on the tattooed leader's jaw.
The black-haired man reaches out and firmly grabs his opponent's arm, locking him in place for the finish. Grrr! Tojo struggles with all his might against the crushing grip. Kuro locks Tojo into a punishing and lethal chokehold. "Don't you guys interfere! This one is mine!" Tojo screams at his nearby allies. Amano pensively realizes that Tojo must win this by himself to truly rule the area. "I'll send all of you to hell," Kuro declares with a wide and terrifying grin. Gah! Tojo grits his teeth as he strains against the overwhelming pressure. A vision of his lost loved ones reinforces Tojo's lethal resolve.
"Are you sure you don't want to call for backup?" Yuji asks a worried Amano.
"A shrimp like you thinks he can beat me? In your dreams, asshole!" Kuro sneers.
Shh. Tojo adjusts his stance and firmly finds his balance on the floor.
"This bastard!" Tojo yells as he manages to throw his massive opponent backward. Whish! He winds up a powerful punch with focused and lethal intent. Thud! A perfectly timed and heavy strike lands squarely on Kuro's face. "Is that all the strength you've got?" Kuro asks with a cocky, mocking grin.
Thwack. Kuro asks who will break first as blood splatters from their violent clash.
Grr! Tojo reaches out and grabs Kuro by the head with a fierce grip. Whish! He pulls the leader in to deliver a devastating and final headbutt. Crack! A brutal impact echoes as blood sprays from the sudden collision. Thud! The scarred blonde man asks if their leader has been knocked out cold. Kuro stands swaying and dazed with blood streaming down his face. Thud, the tattooed leader finally collapses to his knees before his opponent. He's strong, Yuji's allies whispered, stunned by the overwhelming display of power.
Hey, don't just stand there, jump him! The scarred blonde man yells to his lackeys.
You're not getting past me, the large man says, blocking the charging intruders.
Stop it! The fight is over!
Amano screams to finally halt the escalating violence. You lost. Looks like we've settled our score, Tojo tells the fallen leader. Shh! Tojo prepares to deliver a final and crushing strike to his enemy. Crack! Tojo lands a brutal kick as the leader lets out a pained scream.
The scarred blonde man reveals he already called his cousin in the mobile investigation unit.
Tojo agrees to wait for the MIU while his friends fear they will be arrested.
Relax, nobody's getting arrested. We're gonna wait for them to show up, Tojo says.
It's fine, trust my friend.
The smoky man says as he reassures a nervous Yuji.
Click. The steady and rhythmic sound of footsteps signals the arrival of authority. What's going on? A brawl? The arriving police officer asks as he surveys the scene.
Kuroki lies to Hodaka about who started it, while Hodaka notes Tojo's guts for his actions.
Tojo realizes that Kuroki has corrupt and powerful police backing him. Too late to realize it now. You can reflect on your stupidity in prison, Hodaka sneers. Tojo asks if he has such authority, but Hodaka claims he is the law here. Kuroki asks the officer if he can punch them once they are in the cells. Hey, take these guys in! Hodaka barks his orders to the other officers. The police officers charge forward with their batons raised to stack.
Mind if I make a quick call? Tojo asks the corrupt officer with calm defiance.
Hodaka laughs and tells Tojo to call whoever he wants since nobody can oppose him. Tojo claims Hodaka will soon be begging while Kuroki mocks his ignorance of Chief Tanaka to his phone as the corrupt officers watch. Got it, Tojo says into the receiver while Amano and Yuji watch with concern. Tojo thinks this is a good